Duke, you suck.
You shut your mouth!
Welcome to the Duke You Suck podcast. And now, Duke Durango.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Duke You Suck podcast. I'm here with my good friend, former PWA referee and former candidate for Ward 11 in the Calgary City Council race, Rob Ward. Welcome to the show, brother.
Hello, I'm back. I've made it onto the show twice, which means I must have done something right, I hope.
Yeah, you did something really right. You're a good guy and you're always interesting, man. And more importantly than all of that, you try to do something to better our city. And for that, I give you the utmost respect, because not a lot of us are willing to throw our hat in the ring,
Yeah, it's not easy. I can tell you that from experience. It is not easy. So yeah, anybody who does it, it's a lot of work. They have my respect.
Well, I'm from somebody who likes to stand back and throw pot shots at the government because it's funny. Some of the respect gets lost on what goes into to a guy like yourself that's even running for, city council, the kind of money a person needs for exposure, the kind of legwork that goes into door knocking, signage, flyering, all that PR work, etc. So, I mean, let's just talk about your experience initially. Like first and foremost, let's quickly talk. I know we probably covered it in our early podcast, but real quick, let's just run over what made you decide to run. And then, what was the process like there?
That's literally the question I probably get asked the most throughout the whole thing was why did you run?
Such a cheesy standard. I
know, but it's like, I don't really have like a bulletproof answer to that. Like you, I watch politics and I know things can be done better. I know it can. And basically, just talking with friends, family, people I've worked with, people I've volunteered with, businesses I've worked with, and they're like, obviously Jeremy Farkas was going to run for mayor, so the spot's open.
Right.
And they just wanted to see, a decent person get in to replace him. And right. So, my kind of thought to them was, well, if I'm going to do this, like anything in life, I'm not going to half-ass it. I'm going to go all in.
Yeah, no, you went balls deep, man.
Oh yeah. And then I said to them, if I'm going to do it, I need your help. You can't just do this as one guy. And so everybody agreed, and I signed up. I think it was on January 21st or something. So it was. Yeah,
I remember when you told me, man. I was like, oh, I sure hope he wins. Like,
it was like an 8-month campaign, and I don't know, obviously, but I would say that this was probably the most unique campaign that's ever been run because of, when I started, it was the depths of COVID and you couldn't do anything.
Right.
And then it kind of loosened up again. And then it tightened up again, and then it loosened up again. I was just like, you couldn't plan anything, right? Like I was going to do town halls and stuff in September, and obviously we couldn't do that. So
call your 10 best friends and have a town hall.
Yeah,
I guess
so it was difficult, but it was interesting. So yeah, I decided to run because I want to see better for the city. I've lived here my whole life, and I've seen the ups and downs. I know we're capable of better, and I've always believed if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. So that's why I ran.
Well, and that's the one thing I appreciate, right? Is I'm going to call out people like Drew Farrell right now. City council is nowhere for career politicians. I think that, these last 2 terms of council, I believe, in my opinion, have been nothing short of a complete disaster.
Yeah.
Mayor Nenshi and crew, I mean, they not without challenge, and I don't want to minimize the challenges they faced with, the economy tanking, our tax base downtown shrinking down to a minimum. But there was no flexibility because there was no foresight on their part that the bottom could drop out. I mean, this spend, tax spend. When the tax base drops, you're screwed. And that seemed to be lost on the last council. So, I mean, if we got people like Drew Farrell that's been in there, I mean, I don't honestly almost remember a time when Drew Farrell wasn't on city council.
Well, or I'm not sure, but I think Diane Colley-Urquhart was in even longer.
Right.
Like 28 years or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's just horse shit, right? Like it should be 2 terms and get out of there.
I agree. Like I said during my campaign, I would do 2. I think the right number is 10 years. So that's between 2 and 3 terms.
Right.
And
Right.
I think if you can't achieve what you've set out to do within 10 years, you
In a
probably shouldn't be there.
Yeah, if you're, yeah, that's fair. Yeah, in a decade, if you're looking this is where I'm going to take this shot right now. And I don't give a shit. Um, Trudeau's been in power for near a decade now, and
Yeah.
he has more campaign lies, and never mind scandals. I'm just going to talk about unfulfilled campaign promises. He has more unfulfilled promises than he has fulfilled promises, and yet people
Yeah.
keep voting for this asshole. So how do we not have a term on this? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, that's the problem. Like,
and I'm sure there was people that would have said the same about Harper, right? Like, geez, we need
oh,
the
for sure.
maximum 2 terms of this guy, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, even if you're not a liberal supporter, surely there's somebody better in the Liberal Party. There has to be.
well, there's got to be somebody better in all the parties. I
Yeah.
can't believe the unbelievable amount of dog shit that gets presented to us on a federal and provincial level for candidates. Like, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. It's that's the sad thing. I mean, even when you look, across Canada and even, the US with the presidential thing, like, is that really the best candidates we can come up with? Oh
Well,
my God.
that one to me is even bigger, right? Like, you've got a way bigger political machine. You've got way more money behind it. You got, what are we talking? 335 million, 340 million
Yeah.
people. And like you say, those two pant shitters are the best you can do. Like, one of them's
Trump and Biden, like,
nah,
oh
one
my
of them's
God.
one of them's a crazy old racist. The other one's shitting his pants insane. Like, I don't understand what we're supposed to vote for there.
I know it's scary. And that's part of the problem, right? Is it's just like, how do you get good people into politics to commit to that? Because
Yeah.
I can tell you from going through it, that was it's exhausting physically, mentally.
Now,
It is not easy.
did you find, not to bring up the negative side, but did you
No,
find anybody, any of your other fellow candidates kind of coming after you or attacking you at all? Or was it just all kind of pure, everybody was just sort of
our
putting their
ward,
platform?
considering how competitive it was and how somewhat tight it was actually pretty good.
Because, yeah, what was the margin, if you don't mind me asking? Because when I looked, it was like 3%.
I think I lost by 1.8%.
Oh, geez, man.
Yeah, it was close. I think it was 880 votes.
Wow, good for you, brother. Like, and that's, I mean, that in itself, I mean, you didn't necessarily lose first place. I'd say you won second at your first attempt with a, now that people know your name, if you want to run again, you might have a shot at it.
Maybe, yeah. And like in terms of the negative stuff, like the only really negative stuff was I mean, I called out the union stuff and we'll talk about that more, but I believe that's really important that people knew about that.
Yeah.
So when I called that out, my opponent started to go personal on me. She was saying, like, Rob has no internet or social media history. Who wipes their entire social media history? What does he have to hide? And I'm like, well, I don't think people need to know when I went to my mother's for dinner. So everything's private. Like, I didn't wipe everything. It's just private. That's all.
Yeah.
So I don't have anything to hide. There's nothing.
Well, and that's one of those things. Like, if you think there's something to hide, dig up the dirt.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Like, because I don't. Any Tom, Dick, and Harry generally doesn't have access to what I'm putting out there.
Right. And like, to go back on that, when she said that, I found stuff on her from in the past, and I didn't post it because who cares? Like, let's go on platforms and ideas and experience rather than digging up a dirty past. And none of it was even that bad, but some people would have not liked it.
I mean, the thing is, you got to be careful when you're holding someone's feet to the fire on things they've said, X number of years, because we all know posts and tweets don't age well. Excuse me. One of the problems with social media is that you post something off the cuff that, at the time was probably acceptable, but 10 years later, obviously doesn't age well. And it's not like you're going back and deleting that shit.
No, yeah. And that's going to happen, right? Like, views change, things that were once okay to say are no longer okay to say. And
for sure.
That's the thing that bothers me with it is everybody has said something at some point that is not good. Everybody. I don't care who you are.
Man, I probably said something this morning that wasn't good.
Probably, maybe.
Yeah. Well, no, and I mean, that's the thing is everybody gets up on these high horses, and the one knock I'll really make against both sides is it used to really be the left that would, if there was censorship or, trying to shut somebody down, it was never the left. The left were always the people saying, don't burn those books and, stop smashing rock and roll records. And now it's the left that wants everybody censored and everybody shut down. And that's a hard thing to watch. You know what I mean? Because it's somebody that leans mostly left. It's like, well, if you're left, you're in with those guys. Well, no, I'm not. Like, so it's hard to run in a position like yours as sort of a centrist,
Right. Yeah. And it's even like you look at, on a larger scale with society, there's that recent thing that happened in the NHL with the Chicago Blackhawks. And
Wow.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. When I first heard about that, I didn't know the story. And I was just like, oh, God, here we go again. But
Yeah.
then I actually read the story and I'm like, Jesus, like that is
That's
not
horrifying,
good.
man.
That's
That is
really
horrifying.
bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard, right? Because some people go up and dig for these little things that are just so insignificant, and then stuff like this just gets blown over. And that's a problem I have with it. Is we need to focus on the real bad things that are happening. Like that should never happen to anybody. That is terrible.
I was talking to my wife last night about it because she hadn't heard anything about it, and so when I'm telling her, like, there was at least 7 people in coaching and management at like the highest ends of the team that definitely knew. And sort of some of the talk I've heard is it was one of those things that kind of everybody on the team knew, which, I mean, how humiliating would that be for Beach?
Yeah.
So that to me is one of those transgressions. Like, I think there's always room for forgiveness and we always got to find a path to redemption, but that's a pretty big deal. Like that's a tough thing to just forgive and forget, even if I could say you forgive that person, you're not going to forget that.
Yeah. Like I haven't, again, I haven't read too much into it yet, but like the guy who did all this, how is he not in jail? Or is he in jail? I don't even know. Yeah. He should be.
Is he still in the league? Like, did these, I mean, my question is, okay, so you knew this shit was going on. You, if that guy had any more victims after Beach, you're all responsible for that too. Like that's where I have a real issue with that,
Yeah, I believe he did have more victims after. Again, I haven't read it all, but yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, so that to me is where those people should be held as responsible as he is for that. They're culpable in him continuing.
Right. Yeah, then even if we go back on the negative things on the campaign, we're both horrible for going off on tangents. But so yeah, the only other things were, I found other, and I hate saying this, other conservative candidates, because I don't really consider myself a conservative, to be honest.
Right.
I don't consider myself anything. But yeah, there was doors that I had gone to and talked to people, and they had my sign up. And then like a week later, my sign would be gone and their sign would be up. And I'm like, that's weird. So a couple times we did go back.
Right.
To see, like, hey, what happened here? And yeah, guys were lying about what I believed in. Like one guy, I think it was in Douglas Glen. He had my sign changed to a Devon sign. And apparently Devon told him that I was pro density, like that I wanted to put up condos next to his house or something.
Oh,
I'm like,
gosh.
What? Like that is.
I'm gonna tear down all these houses so I can build condominiums.
Yeah, no, that's like I ran my whole campaign saying that the city shouldn't be developing a community without getting approval from the residents.
Yes.
I'm not against densification, but don't force it. Get acceptance and communicate how you're going to do this properly. But yeah, Devin went ahead and said, oh no, Rob will put up fourplexes everywhere. And I'm like, not true.
Yeah, and how do you battle that once it's out there? It's not like you can go back to every one of those houses, right?
Well, that's a problem, right? And I think
there's got to be some sort of accountability for that.
For
sure.
That
person was I mean, I don't want to put the constituent in this position per se, but if there's a person that was willing to say, fill out an affidavit saying this person told me exactly this on this date, and just like, because I'm so tired of the bullshit, because you can't, it's at the point, it doesn't matter who's honest. You can't trust them because the other guy's lies so much. You just assume everybody's lying.
Yeah. And I think that my honesty came through pretty well, because, and then even another example is Mike Jameson was telling people that if they vote for me, taxes are going to go up. And I was just like,
it's like the opposite of what you were saying.
Yeah, like it's just crazy. So I think people generally saw through that, but there was other dirty tactics, like, we'll move into signage here. I don't know for sure, but I feel like our ward had more signs up than any other ward.
Is that right? Hey,
it was sign warfare. It was ridiculous. So yeah, one day I got a message from somebody who voted for me, and they said, Devin's putting his signs in front of yours on 90th Ave. Like he's moving his signs directly in front of yours.
Right. So the view of yours is blocked on the way by, kind of thing.
like, and so I went and looked at it, and it was ridiculous, like right in front of them. I was like, oh my God. Like
Yeah.
and I said, my mom, she was really upset about it. And I said, Mom, if you think if he thinks that's what's going to win him an election, let him waste his time because it's not going to work.
Well, the truth is, somebody like me that drives by, I mean, I'm not going to pretend to be the most educated voter in the world anymore. Having said that, when I drive by, if I notice that, I'd be like, look at this petty asshole. You know what I mean? Like that's how I view something like that.
Well, that is what happened, is it
Right.
kind of got out that he was doing this, and people were just like, that is so pathetic.
It is. It's embarrassing.
Yeah. So
come on, man.
And and as I said, it didn't make a lick of a difference because I believe he finished second last or third last, like
Right.
sixth or seventh. So yeah.
Well, see, and that's the thing. If you feel that's what you have to resort to win, should you really be running? Like, are you the guy? Like, again, I'm not coming from a moral high ground here because I can be a piece of shit too. But at the same time, I'm not running for council. And I believe that, yeah, people running for council are still people, and that, we don't want to put them up on a pedestal. They're still just people. But I think if you're doing shit like that to win the election, what are you going to do when you win? How are you going to abuse that power? And that's always what concerns me with those types of things.
Exactly. And then the only other, and this I think is more dirty, is there was, again, Mike Jameson, who, for people that don't know, he was a Craig Chandler candidate who run on. So Craig Chandler, I'm not going to trash the guy because he gets really upset when you do that. So just Google his name. You can learn everything you need to know.
Can I say this? Is he some sort of religious kook? Am I wrong?
I don't think so. I mean, he's super conservative, which sometimes that
comes across that way.
Yeah. So I don't know, but yeah, he's got some history.
I mean, hey, I don't want to go too hard on those guys. I got Tom Kimmick as my MP, who somehow voted against getting rid of fucking conversion therapies. So fuck that guy.
But yeah, so Craig Chandler put up a candidate in every single ward, basically to try to win a slate of candidates to control City Hall, which I think is wrong. But
seems dodgy. Seems like one of those like evil Batman plots.
Basically. So Mike Jameson was his guy for Ward 11. He didn't live in the ward, so which I thought was weird.
I thought that was part of the deal. I thought
you don't have to live in the ward. I can run for the Northwest if I want to.
No.
Yeah.
Gotta change that.
I agree, they do. But what was really funny was, so when we were door knocking in Maple Ridge, I came across, or one of my volunteers came across one of his candidates that was running in another ward.
Right.
But she lived in Ward 11. So I'm like, why wouldn't you run her in the community that she lives in? Like, it just, the logic just didn't make any sense.
And now I don't know sort of who the Craig Chandler list candidates were. Did any of them win?
Yeah, the one that took over Colliercart did.
Okay.
That was, what's his name? Wow, I'm blanking. Anyway, he won. Matter. And then I think, like Peter DeMong was kind of his guy, but not really. So
okay.
Yeah. I think only the one did that replaced Colliercart. Dan McLean. That was his name.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which, I mean, he seemed like a decently legit guy. I mean, he did some shady stuff too, but whatever. But yeah, back to shady stuff. So
now, were you surprised by some of the shady stuff, or was it kind of like, I sort of expected it? You've heard of it before.
Yeah, I mean, I knew Chandler's playbook. He's done this before. I knew what he was gonna do. I actually called it like to the day almost.
Right.
So yeah, Mike Jameson would go to houses, door knocking, talk to people, and then he'd put up signs without their permission.
Oh man.
And so I got drawn to this because one morning I woke up and Kristen went for a run in Willow Park, and she's like, there is a ton of Mike Jameson signs up in Willow Park. And I live here. I volunteer here. I know a lot of people here. So I was like, that doesn't seem right.
Like a disproportionate number.
Yeah, like if you look at the poll results, I destroyed Willow Park. I knew I would. But so yeah, she tells me this and I'm just like, that is odd. So I went for a walk that morning and I saw these signs and I'm like, I know who lives there. Like that, I talked to that person. Like, this doesn't seem right. And so I actually knocked on some doors and said, hey, did you know that you have a Mike Jameson sign out front? And they go, Mike who?
Oh.
I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, no, I don't put signs on my lawn. And I'm like, well, you have a sign on your lawn. And they looked out and they're like, I didn't ask for that.
That's not cool.
So, and then he was also, there was another one near my house. It's a guy, new to Canada, doesn't speak hardly any English, and he had a big sign on his lawn. And I'm like, how does that work? Like the guy can't even speak English.
Right.
So mainly what he was putting up signs on many lots without permission, and he was also just taking advantage of new Canadians putting up signs on their lawns.
Right.
And I'm like, that's
slippery.
just wrong. And again, my mom, she would get so mad about it. And I'm just like, Mom, you have to remember, signs don't vote, people do.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and you would see like, you'd wake up some mornings and there'd be a bunch of signs in, say, Lakeview. And then 3 days later, all the signs would be gone. And I'm like, see, it's taking care of itself.
Right.
Yeah.
People. Well, and I mean, if I walk out and see that sign on my lawn, not only am I going to take it down, you're going to get chirped hard.
Like, well, yeah, some people blind copied me on some emails to him.
Right.
And they were mad.
That's harsh. Not, because that's just simply, I mean, that's just not acceptable. Right. Like it's
pretty sleazy. And then another trick that he used, and I had heard of this trick before, is, so say you've got, I live next to you, my house, your house, they'd put a sign directly on the property line so that each neighbor thought the other neighbor got the sign. So they'd stay there until they finally talked or.
Right.
Yeah. And then even in my own street here, he put up signs on houses where people aren't home. They haven't been home for months, or the house is abandoned.
Really?
So they like scouted houses that people were not at. Like, yeah, there was one down the street. Nobody's been in that house for months, but somehow they have a sign. I'm like, doesn't add up.
That's wild.
Yeah. So that's the kind of stuff that the dirty games that go on.
Yeah. What was the dumbest promise you heard? Like, what was the dumbest thing you heard somebody say in this campaign?
Maybe this is really general, but whenever a lot of guys put on their pamphlets lower taxes, and I'm like, right. You can't promise that.
Yeah,
like
a lot of people, lower taxes. You got to be realistic about that.
No, and people need to understand that city council is, you don't just go in and dictate what's going to happen. To get anything done, you have to get 8 of the 15 votes. So you can promise the sky, but if people don't agree with you, it's not going to happen.
Well, and saying things like, I'm simply going to lower taxes. Like you can say, I'm going to, we're going to look at the tax rate. We're going to try and keep it steady, low, be fiscally responsible. But to say that, like, you've got a current running expense. So to cut the money coming in on your current running expense is cutting your nose off to spite your face. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. Like,
right. Yeah. So, I mean, that's, obviously my campaign talked about fiscal responsibility, and I told the people at the doors, I said, my goal is when you open your tax bill at the end of the year, I want you to understand where the money is going. And I want you to think, okay, that's good value. I understand that. Yeah. That's my goal.
Well, see, most people I think are like you and I were, do I love paying taxes? Not necessarily, no. But I also, there's a point where I don't mind paying taxes if the services are there. You know what I mean? Exactly. And recently, in recent times, it's been a, consistent, not that in recent memory, there's been double-digit tax increases, right? So I think that when we look at that, it's kind of like we do need to get a handle on fiscal responsibility, but at the same time, you got to be realistic about how you're turning off that clock, because we can't consistently increase the tax. But the reason what's funny to me is we've increased the tax so high in the last decade, and the services have dwindled, right? Yeah. So that to me is, delivery of service is a real problem.
Well, and I think of, here, I'll get a little blunt. The more progressive candidates they say they care about small business,
right? Which
I believe they do, but at the same time, they're not too concerned about rising tax rates. Well,
right.
You had a business that the tax rates have gone crazy for small businesses. I talked to many people.
Oh, your business losing money and you're getting taxed out the ass. That's a hard pill to swallow, right?
Oh, exactly. Like, there was people I talked to and they said, oh yeah, 10 years ago, my taxes were $8,000 a month and now they're $30,000 a month.
Yeah.
Like, how is that sustainable? That's
well, how do you justify a price increase to that?
Yeah. And so it's like, if I'm trying to run a business and my tax expense went up, what is that? 4 times almost in 10 years? Like,
like 300, your tax rate went up 380%.
It's great. Yeah. Good math. Right. That's impressive.
And then that's all I can do is percentages. So then factor that into your other costs of living price increases.
Yeah.
I mean,
and
so all of a sudden your tax rate is, and it's the one you can't cut costs. You can't change a supplier. You can't find a less expensive way to do something at that. You're completely, your hands are completely tied.
Well, what you're going to end up doing is you're going to have to pay people less, or you're going to have to let people go. And, if a progressive candidate says that they care about small businesses, well, by continually increasing the tax rate, these small businesses are closing their doors.
Yeah.
And all that's going to be left is your Walmarts and your superstores and your Amazons. So no, you don't care about small business. I'm sorry, you don't, because you're killing it.
Well, I was going to say your tax rate shows you don't care, right? Like the way city
Right.
council just went and sort of willy nilly, people are getting 60% tax increases year over year. Like, are you crazy? Like how do you as a council member or as a mayor, and I'm calling you out, Nancy, stop there.
Good check.
But how do you as a council go to bed and be like, hey, yeah, this is the answer. We're going to tax these businesses. We're going to increase their tax rate 60%. Like in 2018, 2019, how many fucking businesses went under? How many restaurants went tits up in 2019?
So much. Yeah. And
Right?
the pandemic thing is harsh and it's another factor, but
Yeah.
I always believe that you have to have contingency plans in place. Like I had it for my own campaign.
Right.
Like when I knew we couldn't do town halls, I said, all right, this is where the funds are going. This is what we have to do now. This is plan B. And to not have contingency planning in place, I think is one of the worst parts about our city council. Like everything's a surprise, it seems. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and just, I mean, the simple mentality of what it's been in the last little while. I'm so glad there has been some turnover. I mean, I wish our mayor all the best. I wish everyone that what I mean? I really and truly, I wish our governments all the success in the world, whether I voted for that candidate or not, because we all need to succeed.
Yeah.
If they really and truly have a vision that they think will make our city better, then please, let's give it a shot, because it's, we can't, I'm not gonna say we can't do any worse, because that would be just crazy to say. But at the same time, I mean, when we're looking at how many, in the last decade, how many vanity projects got built with tax dollars?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? How many just white elephant bullshit, Peace Bridge, Blue Ring, what's that fucking mess out off Highway 1 there by Canada Olympic Park? The funeral
towers.
Oh my Lord. Like, who's green lighting this shit? Right.
Yeah.
And then, the people in the city are saying, hey man, we need to get some control on this, because not only are these art projects expensive, they're horrible to look at. And the mayor's answer to that is, well, it's such a small percentage of budget, we just shouldn't worry about that.
Right. See,
Right,
and that's one thing I probably could have advertised it better, but in my
Right.
campaign, I came up with an idea of how to, because you need art in a city. Nobody
Look
wants a
behind
concrete
me.
jungle.
I want you to look behind me.
Yeah.
This
There you
is
go.
this
Proof
is
in the
about
pudding.
this is about a tenth of what hangs in our house. Seriously.
And it's nice.
And thank you very much. But so you're talking to somebody that appreciates art.
Exactly.
You know what I
So,
mean?
yeah,
But also when I run low on funds, you know what I stop buying? Art.
Yeah.
Makes
sense, right? I mean, I came up with the idea that, we have the Alberta College of Art and Design here in Calgary, and it's a degree program, and people are coming out of that program every year. So my idea was, why don't we the city get in on that and say, okay, let's have them do a final project to finish their degree. You're going to go to a community, we'll use Willow Park, and you're going to go to Willow Park and you're going to make a relevant piece of art for Willow Park. And so now you're saying, okay, well, how do you pay for it? Local businesses and local people can sponsor that project.
Right.
So they get basically free advertising out of it. You get relevant art that is relevant to the community, and these new grads get some exposure to help get their name out there. I mean, the art business is terrible. It's hard to get going, right? So that helps.
Well, and I mean, me as a taxpayer, I'd be willing, okay, let's, I'm not somebody that just says spend, spend, spend. So let's look at where we can maybe shave some points and put money into that program. Because I would rather see a young artist get their sculpture up in front of the, Cranston Community Center or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's important to give these kids a push,
Yeah. And I mean, I did that partnership with Paul Van Ginkel for my campaign. He's a local artist. And I told him this idea and he said, that's brilliant. That's amazing. And then I talked to some businesses, some restaurants and stuff. And I said, if there was going to be something put up in the community, would you put your name on it, say for a 5,000 or 10,000 sponsorship? And they were
Right.
like, yeah, no, I would do that. So like, it's credible. I didn't just like come up with this pie in the sky idea. It's
Well, even if it's
legit.
a pie in the sky idea, it has some merit, right?
Yeah.
Like I mean, it's something, because like right now, everything is just pragmatic.
Yeah.
That's the best word I can use.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. You're right.
simply pragmatic. What, you know, there's no, it's like, take this for what it's worth, young people. It's like city councils being run by a bunch of 25-year-olds with no frontal cortex yet, that have no fucking vision into the future and how these decisions are going to affect them later on.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the lack of foresight and decision making is another thing that's most concerning to me.
Yeah.
It's
That's
very
a big
strange.
problem for me. Like,
Yeah.
it's just like, you know, do I love your compost station idea, City of Calgary? On paper, I really do. But that's a white elephant, man. You cannot support that thing.
Yeah, I mean, Kristen works in waste and recycling. There's a bombshell that maybe people didn't know. Yes, you know, my partner works at the city. Yeah, the compost thing, like I see the benefit of it, but there's many parts of waste and recycling that I think don't make sense. Like even
Right.
recycling, a lot of recycling doesn't actually get recycled. People don't know
Don't get me started on them clamshell things.
that. Yeah.
Like,
Another
do
thing
you
I
know,
wanted to
do you know
talk.
this? Because this, I was just at, my wife and I were literally talking about this a couple of weeks ago, because I had some of those, you know, we had some fruit in those clamshells. And I
Oh,
asked her, I was like, do you know if the city's still paying to rent trailers to store this shit?
yeah.
You remember hearing that? They were spending like
Oh,
half a
yeah,
million
yeah,
dollars a year on trailers to store clamshells because they
yeah.
couldn't find a recycler.
Well, and even CBC did an undercover of where does your recycling go?
Right.
And yeah, it goes to Malaysia and they burn it.
Oh, perfect.
That's good.
Yeah. Perfect.
So yeah, we
That
can
makes
do
me feel
better.
better. That makes me
Yeah,
feel better.
we can do
Yeah.
better. Another thing I wanted to talk about, because I don't know, because I spent the last 8 months in my own ward mainly, was
Right.
election signs. Did you find that there was a ton more election signs for this election?
I did. And there were some in weird locations, right? Like, I know
Yeah.
I reached out to you at one point and said, hey man, is there, you know, I'm all but seeing these signs on Deerfoot Trail.
Yeah, that's
When
illegal.
Yeah, you kind of had to enlighten me, like, no, I think it was a maximum of 60 where they could put
Yeah.
signs.
So
And I've seen a
most
number of campaign signs that were in 70 zones, you know.
Yeah, so that's kind of the general rule, but yeah, like roads like Anderson, Deerfoot, Southland Drive, Blackfoot,
Right.
those are all illegal. You can't put signs there. And so that's an interesting one because there was a lot of illegal signs in our ward, a lot.
Right.
And I reported them to 311 and they would nothing was being done basically.
Yeah.
So finally I kind of demanded a call with a manager or somebody higher up to be like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And I got a call back from one of the sergeants with bylaw. She was actually a very nice person, very reasonable to talk to. And I just said to her, I said, you know, I've reported signs that are very illegal. Like, for example, the big 8 foot by 4 foot signs. Those
Right.
have to be 30 meters away from an intersection. And that's just for
Oh,
safety,
okay,
right? For
yeah.
visibility.
Right.
And there was some that, you know, I'm a nerd. So I took out my laser golf rangefinder and measured. There was some, and I put in the report, like laser measured at 8 meters.
Oh my.
8 meters rather than 30. And so I'd report that and nothing was done. And so I talked to this lady and she said, the problem is there is so many illegal signs that they can't
How do
get
they
to
keep up?
it.
Yeah.
And that's for sure valid, very
That's
valid.
fair.
And I believe
Yeah.
that. So I said to her, I said, well, what's the solution here? Because like a guy like me who is following all the rules, or at least
Yeah. Doing your
I
best
believe
to,
I
anyways.
am,
Yeah.
what prevents me from just putting up illegal signs everywhere? Because you're not going to do anything about it. And she goes, yeah, that's the problem.
Right. Yeah.
And I said, oh, that is a problem. And so I said to her, I said, why don't we just move towards banning signs on public property? And she actually told me that 4 years ago, she was on a committee that tried to do that.
Right.
And unfortunately, it didn't go through.
Right.
And I think that's a solution. I
Well,
mean,
I'll be honest with you, man. I don't know if I've ever voted somebody because I saw their line sign,
exactly.
you know?
As I said earlier, people vote, not signs.
Yeah.
So I if I got into council, I would have loved to see a ban on signage on public
Yeah.
property.
Yeah, 'cause now that I'm thinking about it, I didn't even look at the signage. I went on the City of Calgary page, looked up who was running in my ward, went to their websites and started reading.
Yeah, and that's how most people do it. But it's just there's a lot of issues with it. Obviously safety, obviously
Yeah.
bylaw monitoring it. The garbage, the signs are not recyclable. I mean, they can be
That I didn't know.
reused, but they're not
Right.
recyclable. They go in the
Okay.
dump.
Perfect.
And then there's,
Not to
people
mention the
just-
sheer money that gets wasted on all those fucking signs.
well, and that's another part of it, right? Like if people want, elections are just run by money. Well, if we can eliminate a large, like my signage between my lawn signs and my big signs probably cost, well, at least $10,000.
Right.
So if we eliminate that 10,000, everybody is a bit more on a level playing ground, right?
Yeah. That's a big chunk of cash, man. That's a
big time. Yeah. So I think I would love to see them go away. I just think they're useless. And I think, people say, oh, well, then I know who's running, or that's garbage. Oh, well,
we have the internet
I see
now.
a lot of these signs that I know the person's legit.
Yeah.
That's garbage too.
I'm a moron, and even I can find it on the internet. So
Yeah.
figure it out, right? Like
I mean,
if you
the
give a
person
shit,
that-
you'll find it.
Yeah, the person that had the most signs in our ward was Mike Jameson, and
Yeah.
he finished 4th, I think.
Yeah. So
So-
there you go. People
Yeah.
run. People vote. People try to vote on substance.
They should.
Yeah.
Which
They-
brings me to my next.
I was just gonna say, let's talk about lack of or less educated voters.
You like that? That was a solid
Yeah,
transition.
solid
I thought.
transition.
So the interesting thing, I when we were door knocking, a lot of people would say, "Oh, I haven't even thought about it. I don't even know who's running. How many people are running?" People had no idea.
Well, 27 people for mayor. How do you keep track of that shit?
Right, but even for
That's
council, people
goddamn
had
ridiculous.
no idea.
Yeah.
Which I don't blame them. I get it. People are busy, and a lot of people don't care about this stuff. But when I looked at my web traffic, so I had very steady web traffic throughout the whole campaign. I would dare say I had the most web traffic.
Right.
But on election day, my web traffic went up 500%.
Really?
So I'm like, this means people are doing their research
On
before they
election
go
day.
vote.
Yeah, standing in the line.
Yeah, and I don't want to give away too much, but I can see everything.
Yeah.
I can literally watch somebody on my website.
Right. Watch their clicks.
For all you people that are creeped out by people monitoring you on the web, yeah, I can watch you. I can watch your mouse.
Saying
move
creepy
around
shit
my-
like that's probably why you didn't win, Rob.
But literally, I can watch your mouse move around on my website.
Oh, really? That's
Oh
why.
yeah.
Okay.
So I can see everything. I can see where you're from, what device you're on, and
Right.
you're right. There was some people doing their research in the line.
Right. That's
So,
funny.
I mean, I'm not going to change the world on this podcast here today, but I
No,
would
no.
just tell people, do your research, please.
Yeah. And that's I've always said, like, and don't get me wrong, I'm guilty of it myself. So I don't, again, I'm
Yeah.
not coming from a moral high ground here, but I would almost rather a certain level, like if you're going to cast an uneducated vote, almost don't vote.
Well, and I was at my aunt's house last night, and she said that, she's, having a debate with somebody, and she kind of threw out the idea of they should make it mandatory that you have to vote. And I was like, no.
Please don't.
Yeah, because I told her, I said, people are just gonna go and, oh, that's a cool name, ding.
Yeah. Well, not only that, the fiscal conservative in me right away is like, well, now we got to pay to police that.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
And how do we police it? B, how do we prosecute it? How much does that cost in the system? Like, are you crazy? Just stop it, Auntie.
See, and now here's another transition. We'll go to the voting process during
gosh.
this election. There was some serious issues, and I want to be really clear up front. I'm not one of those conspiracy theorists of the election is rigged and the machines are rigged. No, I'm not.
Right.
But there was some valid concerns. I had a few people email me and say, the line is ridiculous. I left my ballot on a chair. I don't know if it's going to get counted.
Right.
Because the line was just crazy. And I said before we went on, if you look at the basics of queuing theory, you never want to have a bottleneck at the end of a process. And that's what we did. You'd go in, you'd show your ID or whatever, and then you'd go to one of 12 tables to get your ballot. And then you'd go to one of 6 or 8 voting booths. and then you'd get in line to put your ballot through one machine.
Yeah.
And that was the problem. That's what caused the lineups, and there was issues with the ballot machines.
Is that right? Hey?
It's like a Scantron test. If you didn't fill the bubble perfectly, it doesn't read. So then the person at the poll is putting this thing in 5, 6, 7 times, and it keeps spitting it out. So the machines, I get it. They got the results out quick. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
But there's issues with it.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
To make somebody sit there and wait for their ballot to be counted, I don't love that idea. I think, just put them into a secure place and count them all at the end with oversight. And
we don't need real-time election results.
I don't think we do. Right. I mean, I get it. We're in a now society, but
for sure.
I'd rather
take a little more time and do it properly.
Exactly. That's what I think.
Yeah.
And the other
what I had a real issue with, it was the weirdest thing in the world to me. When you get there, you showed your ID to get your ballot, you signed something. And I signed it in pencil. And I remember walking away looking at my wife going, is that even fucking legal? Like somebody could just erase that tomorrow. Like you can't sign legal documents in fucking pencil.
Well,
like,
that's really was an issue.
Out of all the other things that kind of went on during this whole entire election, that's the one thing is like, I just signed a legal document in pencil. Like, do we live in the 1700s? Like, what is going on?
I mean, and that's another issue was
I'll be stamping wax at the fucking voting booth.
That's another issue is the whole lack of voter list. And I get why they did it, because there was the one nut job running for mayor who was threatening to
was that Kevin J. Johnson?
Yeah.
How much time's that guy got coming for in jail? He's going down.
18 months, I've heard.
Yeah. Well, I think that's when he's done serving weekends here.
Right. Yes.
Go somewhere else. So 18 months.
Yeah, they didn't have a voter list for that reason. But then the way I would have done it is have a voter list so you can verify who's voting and that they're a real person. But don't give it to the candidates. I'm fine with that. I don't need a voter list. I'll put in the work myself. Right. But yeah, there was, you'd go sign your declaration or whatever, and you'd go vote. And, I'll tell you right now, there is people that voted twice.
Right.
I know there's people that voted twice.
Right. Yeah. So and that should be of concern to all of us.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so now did the city, and again, I'm a little embarrassed to say I have no idea, but did the city even say anything about why they didn't have a voter list? Like, is there a reason for that?
Yeah, it was because of that candidate. That's why.
Okay.
But again, to me, it's like, well, so you
because of one candidate,
have a voter list.
All the other, what did we look at? Total 27 mayoralty candidates. Yeah. We got 14 wards or 15 wards.
14, yeah.
14. Let's average it out at say 7 candidates a ward.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's a lot of people that could have used that voter list.
For sure. But as I said, I mean, I understand. Like, I don't want a guy like that showing up at my front step. So that's fine.
I do. I invite that guy to my front step. Send 7. Hey, Kevin J. Johnson, please come to my front step. I will kick your ass up and down my front street.
Oh God, I would pay to see that. Yeah, and if anybody doesn't know, Jordy very well could. So
I'm so tired of these assholes. Like, this guy's running around representing our city. Like,
I know, it's embarrassing.
You just make us all look bad.
Yeah, but that's why. So as I said, I think they should have had a voter list and just not distributed it to candidates. Right. You have to have that verification step.
Yeah, man, you can't have. It has to be. I mean, don't get me wrong. You can't stop a determined thief is always my attitude, but you have to make it extremely inconvenient for people to vote twice. It shouldn't be like, kind of what we said earlier is, people could literally just willy-nilly like, oh, I'm going to test the system and go vote twice, and voted twice.
Right? And they did. People did.
That's wild to me. Like, how do you walk in there with balls that big for starters? Got to sweat bullets.
Some people just don't care. I learned that a lot during this campaign. Some people just.
My question is, if they call you out, like, sir, you've already voted. Oh, I forgot. What do you say? I was wondering why I had this sticker.
Well, but even if that did happen, you could just say, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
And how are they going to prove that otherwise? What are they going to go through all the Are you
going to go find it?
I don't know.
That's the other thing. Can the governments at all levels quit wasting money on these "I voted" stickers? Yeah. Get out of here with that. I don't care how much money it is. Stop wasting money on that.
Yeah, I get that.
I don't care if it's $25. Stop it.
Exactly. What was the other thing I was going to talk about here? So I have notes.
That makes one of us. You're a pro. I'm an idiot.
The door knocking was interesting. Yeah, I'm trying to think of like good door knocking stories.
Okay, who's the Kirky? Who's the like? Who did you meet, or did you meet anyone that literally just wanted to talk because they were lonely? How
Oh,
many of those?
tons,
I was gonna
tons.
say, how many of those people did you meet?
Oh my God, tons. So, I mean, this isn't a secret. Any decent campaign has this plan in place. You need to have a puller, it's called.
Okay.
So if I'm at a door and I'm talking to somebody, I need to
Oh,
have somebody come and be like, "Hey, Rob, you're
yeah.
wanted 5 doors
Phones for
down."
you. Yeah.
Which is true. We don't like it's not a
Can't be there
lie.
all day. Yeah.
Yeah, but it is true. If there is somebody that wants to talk to me, I have to go.
Right.
But yeah, there's some people, not to generalize too much, but generally older people,
Right.
you could tell they were lonely. And, I met some really good people. I
I
could
bet.
tell that some people were, they were widows and they were lonely. With COVID, they haven't been out much. So I'd talk to them. I had no problem with that. They were nice people. But then there's other people that, we'll call them crazy conspiracy people that just like, oh, have you heard of the globalist agenda being pushed through by China and how Nenchi's a part of it? And I'm just like, it's a little extreme.
I think it's safe to say neither of us are Mayor Nenshi fans, and even
Yeah.
we won't go that far.
I mean, yeah, my answer to that was always, local solutions for local problems. I'm not about a globalist agenda, which is true. So,
What do you say?
like, yeah, like, I don't know what to say to that.
Yeah.
And, oh, I'm trying to think of other extreme
How
examples
many
of
people
stuff.
just literally told you get the fuck off my step?
Not many,
Is that right,
honestly.
eh?
No, I probably we maybe had two bad experiences.
Right. Oh, that's
One
good,
was
man.
just a guy F-bomb this, F-bomb that, get off my property. I don't vote. I'll never vote.
Oh goodness, yeah.
I was like, okay, easy.
Have a good day.
Another guy, he didn't answer the door, so we dropped, I always drop like one of my pamphlets and just say, sorry, I missed you. And he ran out with the pamphlet in his hand and said,
Oh,
get this shit out of my mailbox. Don't ever come back. Like, just angry people.
yeah. Instead of just taking it and
Overall,
throwing.
yeah,
Yeah.
overall it was really good though. Really,
Right.
really good.
Good.
We had a lot of good conversations. People were generally quite polite. I
Right. I honestly, I didn't see one candidate. Not one candidate came to my door.
see, and that's another discussion. Is a lot of people that I went to, they said, "Oh, you're the only person who's come by, so
Yeah. You
I'm
know what?
voting for you."
I'll I'll probably defend the candidates a little bit in that, like, there's still houses being built on my street, so it's a fairly
Okay,
new
yeah,
area. So I'll give them a
but
little bit there. You
my
know.
ward is not like that.
Yeah, that's true.
And yeah, there's no way every house was hit. I mean, part of that for sure was the whole COVID thing. I'll be honest.
Right.
When I started the campaign, I didn't door knock because I didn't think people would be okay with it.
Right.
So I just didn't do it. So
Yeah.
we
How
mainly
many
door knocked
how
from
many homes in your constituency?
40,000.
Oh, and you didn't knock on everyone, you lazy
No.
bastard.
Oh, I don't know what our official number was, but it was definitely north of 10,000.
Wow.
Somewhere between 10 and 20, would be my guess, I think.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was a lot.
That's
And
a
we'd
lot.
go, especially the last like month or two, we would go every day from 9 a.m. to 7 or 8 p.m.
Is that right? Let's shout out your team. Like who's
Yeah.
obviously the lovely and talented Kristen.
So I mean, yeah, because she's a city employee,
Oh
she's
yeah, yeah.
limited in what she could do.
Yeah, for
She,
sure.
she definitely helped out. Like she'd come door knocking with me and just stand there basically.
Right.
Moral support. But
When the mean man yells at you.
even in the final weekend, we had a pretty big door knocking team out, and she was kind of like, I called her the drill sergeant. She was like, no, you go to that door, you go to that door. No, that door's already been done. And she'd like give
Right.
flyers and like, yeah, she was really helpful.
Good.
In my the night of the election, in my speech, I had said she put up with a lot of, I'm going to swear because I'm not campaigning anymore.
Yeah.
She put up with a lot of bullshit during this campaign. She
Right.
did. So yeah, she was huge in all this. Nights coming home where I'm just absolutely exhausted and too lazy to do anything, and she would do it. So yeah, she was huge.
Nice.
My parents, my dad, he's campaigned before with other candidates, so he had
Okay.
good experience. He in the early days came to hand out pamphlets. He came out door knocking. For a man of his age, he worked hard.
Yeah.
I'm
The legend Pat Ward, man.
Oh, I know. I'm 35 and my body still hurts from it. So I don't know how the hell he did it. My mom, same thing. She probably knocked more doors than anybody else.
Is that right?
She
Eh?
was out there all the time with me. Again, I don't know how old she is. She's gonna kill me if she watches this.
We don't need to know. Don't say it. She'll stab
She's
you.
over 60. She
Yeah.
has, she has arthritis. So it was rough.
Everybody, somebody wants to say hi. Look.
Oh my God. There he is. The legend. Franklin on
Yeah.
the cam.
Round face.
There he is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so my mom, she did a lot. And then, I'll be honest, I had a pretty skinny campaign team.
Right.
I had Diana, who kind of did a lot of my fundraising and community stuff. I had Kim, who did all my communication. So anything written, she read and edited. And then Chris actually ran in the election, the last one, against Joe Maglioka. And he did decently well considering he signed up like 2 months before the election.
I think he could have done better than Maglioka.
Oh yeah. But yeah, so he helped out whenever I had like procedure policy questions or anything like that, he generally knew. I had other guys help me out that came out of nowhere. Kevin is one. Leslie, she chose me as the candidate for the ward and then said, and I respect the hell out of Leslie. She did a lot of research into the ward candidates. She had like this spreadsheet that she showed
goodness.
me. It was ridiculous. And
Good
so she said, "You're my guy, and so now I want to help you." And so
Wow.
she came door knocking with me. And that's actually a funny story. I think it was after the first or second day. I said, "Leslie, where do you get the energy?" Like she was insane. And I go, "Where do you get the energy?" And she goes, "Oh, well, I used to run marathons." I go,
Oh,
"I could see that." And I go, "Oh," and we got
Sorry,
talking.
man.
I go, "Well, what's the cat?" I go, "Well, what was your best marathon time?" And she goes, "Oh, I think it was like 2:57." I'm like, "What?"
you ran 26 miles in 2 hours 57.
And so I'm like, hold on.
Holy.
I said, "That's like bearing on Olympic territory there." And she goes, "Oh yeah, I was going to do a trial for the Olympics." I'm like, okay, this all makes sense.
Yeah. Holy. Marathon
Like-
running to me is not to get, I can get off topic easy on something like this, but the mental toughness required to do that just blows my mind.
Yeah, it was crazy. And her energy and her passion, like that's the kind of people we need.
Yeah, that's
in
inspiring.
Politics is people.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
care
why
that
isn't she
much.
running? We need people like that have accomplished things,
Yeah, and she was a really good talker. Like she'd tee up people for me so well. And yeah,
Nice.
she was awesome. That was basically, I had the help from other people. Like my godmother helped with handing out flyers. My sister came out door knocking a couple times. Yeah, I had a pretty skinny team. Like I would dare say that compared to, Courtney who won, I bet you I had a 10th of the volunteers.
Is that right? Hey.
Oh yeah. And I don't know what her budget was. My budget was not huge. I haven't done the official numbers yet, but I think I was about a fifth or a sixth of what Farkas raised when he won.
Really?
Yeah.
Jeez.
And I mean, the rules have changed. It's harder to raise money now, but still you have to pay for stuff. So
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Are
it
you
was
surprised
crazy.
Farkas got dusted so bad?
Yes. I mean, that's a whole nother topic is polling.
Yeah.
Polling is interesting. I mean, when I got my poll results, it said that I was in the lead,
Right.
which I believe I was. What changed? I don't know. I mean, there was a lot of undecided, and I said from day one. I mean, it's hard to do polling in a councillor race. It's harder because people just don't know.
Right.
In a mayor race, it's a little easier, I think. But the thing that I always said about Farkas was, him and Jody. I never know how to say her name right. I just call her Jody. Hopefully, she doesn't hate me.
I think that's what I'm running with, man.
Yeah. So Jody, sorry if I said your name wrong. Him and Jody were neck and neck basically the whole time.
Right.
But what I think was bad for Farkas, and I called it as soon as the results came out, the poll results, is there was like 30% or something undecided. And I said, that is going to kill Farkas because people either love Farkas or they hate Farkas.
Well, and that's what my wife,
not
that was the
undecided.
conversation we have. My wife's like, I have a problem with him because nobody likes him.
And that's just it.
And I said, well, nobody likes me,
And that's why some people just don't like you.
Yeah, and
So,
I don't need everybody to like me,
but
I'm not
and I
looking for
think that
votes
was
either.
Farkas's biggest thing. The thing that was most surprising to me was he lost in his own ward. And here in Ward 11, he lost,
Is that right? Hey,
which that blew my mind.
yeah.
But
I mean, for all intents and purposes, again, I'm not going to pretend to be super politically aware in the last few years, but I thought he was one of those counselors that did a pretty good job. He was more of let's look into things before we just start blasting money and increase taxes.
right, and I uh, door knocking. This will be a good story. Everybody will now know the question that I hated the most, and that Kristen really hated the most, was who are you voting for? I got asked that a lot,
Right.
and I'm just like, that is.
That's not acceptable to ask people.
I don't think it is either. But
No.
there was people that wouldn't let me say anything until I told them who I was voting for.
Really? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not acceptable to me.
I think it's
Um,
crazy, and it was hard because there's a Ward 11 Facebook group that at one time called me out because somebody emailed me asking that question, and I said, I kind of like Brad Field. I read his stuff and I thought he was a really good candidate. I honestly do.
right.
And somebody was like, this guy's an idiot. He's going to vote for Brad Field, and I was like,
Yeah.
God.
So, yeah,
And then
like what
and then in another email, somebody said, are you more similar to Brad Field or are you more similar to Jeremy Farkas? And I was like, I mean, I guess Jeremy Farkas, I'm more similar to him. Because
oh boy.
we're
That's a catch 22. You can't answer that question.
exactly. And by that I meant we're both young,
Yeah.
we're both fiscally conservative.
Yeah, our policy aligns a little closer, right?
Right. And then they posted that on the group saying, well, here he said he's Brad Field and here he said he's Farkas. So it was a setup by
Right.
another candidate's supporters.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh my God. Like,
Yeah. Well, I mean,
who cares?
well, my wife and I were going to vote in the federal election. As we're walking to the polls, she says, "You didn't even ask me who I'm voting for," and I said, "Because it's none of my business."
Oh yeah, me
And that's my own
Kristen.
wife.
Yeah,
Right?
I don't know who she voted for. I don't even know if she voted for me. Maybe she didn't.
I would howl. I would bet she didn't because she knows you're an a-hole. Just no.
I'm not, for the record, but yes.
Yeah, no, he's a good guy, bro. And that's the thing. You were one of those guys that as soon as I heard you were running, I got excited and kind of wished I lived in that ward. You know what I mean? Because it's I've known you for a long time now, man.
Yeah.
And you're a man of integrity. You're an honest guy. You're a straight shooter. Sometimes honest to a fault for some people. Some people don't like brutal honesty and some people do, right? But again, when you grow up with a legend like Pat Ward, who is never going to bullshit you, that's going to rub off, and it's something that I thought was fresh brought to the campaign, just straight up pure honesty. And to hear some of the skullduggery, to use the old wrestling terms, that you dealt with is disappointing. I don't, would it have had an outcome and a change in the outcome? Who knows? But, it's just disappointing that it's got to get to that when people are, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to get these jobs, so they can stay there for the rest of their lives. Like, I don't like.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the biggest thing with the election that I have the issue with is that union backing support. I mean,
right.
And that's another thing that people lied about and tried to crush me on, is saying that I'm anti-union. My wife works in a union. I'm not anti-union.
Yeah, well, people that don't understand, like, I'm not necessarily pro-union, but I also give unions respect, and that the wage I make is probably closely associated to what unions do. So it makes creates a competitive wage market, right?
So the problem I had with that was this union group who ran as Calgary's Future, and they represented the transit unions and kind of we'll say the office workers of the city, as well as the outdoor workers of the city.
Right.
They raised $3 million to back their candidates.
Right.
For comparison's sake, my campaign was right around $30,000.
Right.
So I can't compete with $3 million. I can't even get close.
No, and there's got to be something done about that, right? Like, it's
and that's what people don't know is how that money works. So, anybody who's a union worker. So, like, my uncle worked for transit, Kristen works for the city, other people work for the city that I know. Their union dues were going to this group without them knowing.
Right.
Kristen
being funneled into these political.
Yeah, Kristen didn't know that she was funding a campaign to support Courtney. She had no idea.
Right.
And what's even worse is the union gave Calgary's Future all the union employees' names, home addresses and personal email addresses to spam them with their messagings.
Really?
So like on election day, Kristen got 3 emails about Calgary's future from Calgary's future saying to vote for Courtney Brannigan. And that, I think that's wrong.
Yeah, no, I don't. I actually, that's my problem with unions, to be honest with you. First and foremost, I respect a union, like I say, based previously, but I'll also go hard in the paint and say unions are havens for fuck ups and ass draggers.
Yeah. I mean, I see that there's benefits to them for sure.
Don't get me wrong.
The
And I
garbage
wouldn't
that
say,
in
but
the private sector, how bosses crush their workers. I see the benefit for sure, but
Well,
sometimes
the
I
thing
think
is,
they
the
go way
unions-
too far.
while the unions were necessary for sure,
Yes.
we've grown to a point where the unions have become more interested in sustaining the union than sort of the worker. So, and like I had a friend who was making, this is a long time ago, he was up in Fort Mac working parts in the early 2000s, and he was making $39 an hour at working at Finning Canada. So the union, tells him to go on strike because obviously $39 an hour just isn't a fair wage. So yeah, they go on strike, and this guy's making $80 a week strike pay.
What?
Him and I are talking, and I'm like, okay, so you went from, and you're making overtime on top of that at certain points, right? So I said, you go from making that to $80 a week strike pay. And I looked him right in the eye and said, go tell me your union delegate ain't still getting paid.
Wow.
Right. Well, are you going to get retro? Or are you going to get paid when you go back? He was driving gravel truck within a week.
Huh.
Right. Like that's what unions can do. Right. And quite frankly, and I don't care what anyone says about this. If you're a teacher, if you're a nurse, if you're a police officer, if you're a firefighter, no, you can't have a fucking union. You're an essential service. We'll find a way for you to collective bargain somehow so you can at least have some bargaining power. But no, essential services can't strike. So get out of here with that shit. And I feel very strongly about that.
I mean, here's even another tidbit from the campaign is the Calgary Firefighters Association reached out to candidates. So I had a chat with them. And this will tell you how bad our council was coming into this election. There was people on council that wanted to see our firefighters go from a 3-man truck to a 2-man truck. And I don't know if you know how fighting fires works, but one guy
because I'm a wrestler and a parts guy.
Yeah, one guy has to pump when you get to a fire. That would leave one guy to fight a fire. That ridiculous.
Sounds smart. That sounds logical.
And I believe, I can't remember now because I've wiped my brain.
And if I talk to the people at the fire department, they'd say probably 4 would be ideal.
Exactly. That's right. That's what I was going to say. Yeah. 4 is kind of the industry standard.
Right.
And we want to go to 2. Like, it's just, oh God.
Yeah.
Like that's what I kind of ran my campaign on, right? Was we need to nail our basics.
Yeah.
Like firefighting, that's what you expect when you pay your taxes. Yeah. Firefighting, police.
Yeah. I don't need them there to save my foundation.
Yeah. It's crazy. And especially in these new communities where the houses are so close and they have vinyl siding, things can get out of hand really, really quickly.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So
one house goes up and generally no less than 4 are damaged.
And you talk about fiscal responsibility. Well, guess what? When house fires are spreading from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, your insurance is going to go up.
Yeah.
You're going to pay more insurance. And we've seen that.
Yeah.
And so.
But it all goes hand in hand, right? Because even when you give your address to your insurance company, the first question they start asking is, where's the closest fire hall?
That's right.
Right. Like these are, so all of a sudden we don't have enough fire halls. We don't have enough firefighters in the trucks, like it's, those to me are services you can't defund police, defund firefighting. That to me is, if you say stuff like that, I have no problem telling you you're a fucking idiot.
And I got that question a lot about defunding the police. And I think,
I'm somebody that says, give the police more money, better training, better hand to hand. So I don't always got to fucking shoot a bitch.
Well, and I had no problem with, send money to people that can handle the situation properly. Like I always use the example when I was door knocking, if you were having a mental health episode, threatening self-harm, would a police officer running into your house raise your anxiety or lower it? It would raise it, obviously.
Yeah.
So send in the right people for that job. I have no problem with that, and free up the police.
The thing is, those people have to be able. The thing is, those people have to be able to be able though, in a situation where they can't control that situation, it escalates.
Yeah.
How does that person now defend themselves?
Right.
Right. So these people got to be working hand in hand. There's no one or the other solution.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like I say, personally, I'd like to see more funding. I'd like to see police get better training. I'd like them to receive more crisis training.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, like this is the stuff that people don't understand. They think that, if we take money away, they can't hire as many bad police officers. No. If we went to these unions and said, okay, I appreciate your mandate here is to protect your union worker, But tell you what, if a guy gets 3 strikes, he's down the road and we bring in the next guy, because there's certain jobs you can't be shitty at.
Yeah.
Right. Like this isn't my thought. This is somebody else thought. I wish I could remember who said it, but like, you can't be a shitty airline pilot. That's a job you just can't be shitty at.
That's
right?
true.
You any more than you can be a shitty police officer or a shitty paramedic.
Yeah.
Like, these are jobs you have to be good at.
Yeah.
Weed out the shit ones immediately.
Well, and that's why
they defund the police. No, defund their union that protects these guys or gals.
That's a good point. Yeah. I mean, that's why, to be a police officer, the training is huge. It's not like being a cashier at co-op.
Exactly.
It's a big job. And that's one of the problems. Is what I have a problem with is people that label the police force as bad, or they're all jerks, or
throwing babies out with the bathwater.
Yeah, there's that. I think it's like a social media thing. ACAB, all cops are bad. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, I have a friend who's a police officer, and he's the sweetest man I've ever met. Like, he's not.
Yeah, I know many that are great guys. The problem is, and it's in any organization. I mean, you've seen it in wrestling, you've seen it in your businesses. There is bad people in every industry, in every business. There's probably a bad person at every company.
There's a prick in every rose garden, man.
Exactly. And so that's what we need to work on, is how do you find these people? How do you deal with these people? How do you get these people out?
How do we weed them
like
out,
that?
Right?
Yeah. So that's, when people said that they were pro defund the police, that really irritated me.
Yeah,
but
that's a hard one for me to swallow.
Yeah,
not just because I know other police officers, right? Like I have a friend who spent no less than 14 years putting Hell's Angels in jail. So,
wow.
You want to defund that guy?
Yeah, no.
Right? And so these are the things that people just don't understand, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of, as we end off here, probably my funniest door knocking story was I was a few doors down, and I think it was Kristen or maybe my dad, and they're like, "Oh, somebody wants to talk to you." So I go back to that house and nobody's at the door. So I ring the doorbell, and some guy answers, and he goes, "Oh yeah, they have questions for you. Come on in." And I'm like, okay. So
that's scary.
I take a step into the door. There's this lady on a massage table with a sheet over her. And she's like, "Hi, how's it going?" And I was like, "Good. You had questions for me?" And she goes, "Yeah." And she
please tell me you just stepped in and started massaging her.
No. So there was
awesome.
the guy that answered the door was the massage therapist.
Oh my Lord.
And so she's sitting there getting a massage, and she kind of, lifts her chest up off the table, and I'm like, "Oh, easy." I don't need to see
this is a family show, miss.
So I had a conversation with a lady that was naked on a massage table. It was really weird.
That is, she's in a vulnerable state at that point. So, she obviously had some trust in you, man.
She really didn't care.
Yeah. Or she was a pervert. You can take that however you
want. That was another one. There was some.
Maybe you're too innocent to realize you just got hit on.
Maybe. I mean, there was times where I did. There was there was an older lady in, I think it was Pump Hill, and she said, we talked with her, and she goes, "Oh, you're so young." And I go, "Yeah, I'm 34." And she goes, "And so attractive."
Oh,
and
no.
I was like, "Oh, well, thank you." And she goes, "I want your sign on my lawn. Somebody as good looking as you, I want your sign on my lawn." I was like, Jesus.
Yeah. Flattering, but I have a partner, and I'll see you later.
Yeah, it was weird. That happened a few times. A lot of people were mainly, older ladies. They were just like, "Oh, you're so young and attractive."
Just looking at you like food.
Yeah, exactly.
They thought DoorDash dropped you off.
"Do you want to come in for cookies and tea?" "No, I don't. I'm good."
You want to come in for a Cosbypolitan?
So that was always funny. Was getting
hilarious, man.
Yeah, the ladies.
Did you make sure to tell Kristen you still got it and you got options if she ever wants, if she's ever
Oh yes. Yeah, just such a player.
just getting out there on the town.
Yeah. The only other to wrap it up is, so we saw a lot of new faces on city council. A lot of them were the union backed candidates, which I sent
disconcerting
to
say the least.
Yeah, I sent a message to the winner of our award, and I just said, "Remember who you work for.
Yeah,
you work for the people."
Yeah,
because I think we've lost sight of that. I really, really do.
Well, this isn't I don't know who said this, again, but I come from a time when I was a young man, the politicians stood up for the candidate. Now we live in a time where the politicians stand up to the candidate. And I think that's got to change.
You mean to the voter?
Yes, sorry, to the voter. Candidate stands up to the voter.
Yeah, it's true. It's crazy. But I've heard rumblings already. I might get in trouble for this, but I don't think this will get too far. But
did you just say nobody's watching? Is that what you
so like, Jody Gondek is in, and her campaign manager is Stephen Carter, who he was Nenchi's campaign manager. His wife
also Alison Redford's.
Yes, and his wife actually ran in one of the wards this election. She didn't win. I've been told that Mr. Stephen Carter basically had a meeting with all the new councillors and said, it's going to go Jody's way or I will make life hell for you, which I have a real problem with. So when I hear something like that, I'm like, I don't know what I would have said if I was in that room.
I think I'm just going to stop talking.
No, you're allowed.
No, I was about to say something like that could get me in trouble. I'm not a huge fan of that, guys.
I'm not either. And in the early days of the campaign, there was some Jody signs that went up that were definitely illegal. Like they were on Southland Drive, which is illegal.
Okay.
And one of my team members, I think, emailed him and told him that, and he like denied it. He said, they're not illegal. You have no idea what you're talking about.
Sounds
so then
right.
I called bylaw and told them, and they're like, oh yeah, that's definitely illegal. Yeah. And so then they told Stephen Carter that. They said, bylaw verified, they're illegal. And he just said, you have no idea what you're talking about. I'm like, what?
I think he might have blocked me on Twitter at some point.
I'm sure he did. He blocks everybody on Twitter. Yeah. I'm not on Twitter, thank God. Right. I hate Twitter.
I post and ghost. I don't read replies really anymore. Not that I get a ton of traffic anyways, but yeah, like if I make a post about something, I don't read a reply because I'm arrogant enough that I don't give a shit what you think.
I think that's the way you have to do it.
Yeah, well, because I don't have time, first of all, to engage people on an internet argument. This is why I have this podcast. If you want to engage me in a long form conversation, by all means, reach out to me. I'll have you on and we can talk about whatever. Because first and foremost, I'm not married to any of my ideas. I have a ton of thoughts and opinions, but in the presence of new information, I also like to think I'll change my mind.
Right. Yeah. Right? And that's another interesting thing. You're like me like that. Like we're very similar. I want to hear both sides. I honestly do.
Oh, my wife laughs because she knows my opinion on many things.
Right.
And she'll hear somebody that'll literally voice my opinion to a T. Yeah. And I will literally go devil's advocate just to see if they have a well thought out argument.
Yeah, that's good. But and that's another thing that happened during the campaign was people would, say things, or there was one guy on that Ward 11 Facebook group that was just going at me hard, just trying to like discredit everything, saying I was a liar, all this stuff. And I said, you know what, man? Give me your address. I'll come by. Let's have a chat.
Yeah.
Let's work this out. All of a sudden, disappeared.
Yeah.
I'm like, so I think
that's a coward right there, right? That's a bully and a coward.
I hate to say it, but because I'm a techie guy and I'm a marketing guy, but social media is just disgusting. I would be so okay if social media disappeared tomorrow. I think our world would be better for it.
I'm not going to argue with you, right? Like, especially, the problem with the internet is that, and you've probably seen this meme where it's, the internet has given people the ability to talk mad shit, not get their teeth slapped out. And I'm not advocating slapping people's teeth.
Yeah, no, we're not advocating.
Yeah, I'm not advocating that. But it's removed a certain element of accountability from talking shit.
Yeah.
Especially when you're on Twitter with some made up handle, some animated meme as your profile picture and just, talking mad shit about anybody that listens just to get attention or just to get some likes and it's like you say, it's a cesspool of humanity. It really and truly is, but it's really also what you make of it.
Yeah.
If you want to get in there and argue about politics all day, it can be that. If you want it to be, if you want it to be nothing but looking at pictures of kitties, it can be that too.
That's the best part. Can you imagine if we didn't have Franklin on social media anymore? That would be a bad thing.
There would probably be a paradox and the universe would explode.
People wouldn't know. They wouldn't know kindness anymore.
Saturday wouldn't exist anymore.
Saturday. Okay.
All right. On that note, buddy,
Yeah.
thank you so much for running, man. Thank you so much for trying to make a change in our city.
Bet.
I've learned a lot about elections just in conversations with you. And I think that let's see what happens in the next 6 or 8 months. And then we'll revisit and see how these candidates, see how this candidate's doing on a half-year review.
Are you not going to ask the golden question that everybody asks me nowadays?
Are you running again?
There it is.
I'll ask you that in 3.5 years.
Yeah. But for everybody that's watching that is wondering that, we'll see.
Yeah.
A lot of work needs to be done on the fiscally conservative side of politics. I think we've become lazy and complacent.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, I think you'll run again, but like you say, we'll see. Because
Yeah.
I think you're somebody that wants to make a change. I think you're somebody that's hungry. You're a young guy now. Give it another 4 years, you'll be 38 years old. All sorts of wisdom,
Cool.
and and I mean, again, if there's anything I can do, hopefully you do run again, because I think you're somebody that would do good for our city.
There you go. Well, thank you. And thanks for having me back on. And thanks for Franklin for being part of the show. That was awesome.
Little cat butt. All right, brother. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for being on.
Thanks. You too.
Have a good day. Bye, everybody.
Duke, you suck.